Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. We had two games to go over today, the first two games of the second round of the playoffs, and they were both really fun. There was a lot of cool moments in each of these, a lot of things we can take away from what we saw, so I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. We're going to start off with Warriors versus Grizzlies and then get into Bucks Celtics second, but real quick, please leave a like and subscribe if you do enjoy. It helps me out a lot, and let me know what your big takeaways were. I love seeing what y'all have to say in the comments about these games, so make sure to let me know. Starting off, like I said, with Warriors Grizzlies, this one from the jump was very clearly a higher level of intensity from that first round matchup for both of these teams. While both of these teams had some really fun games, this game straight coming into it, it felt like a huge stakes game. Like this felt like a game 7, and you probably would have thought so by the way that how hard guys were playing, how physical it was, how much the crowd was involved. This Grizzlies crowd was rocking in this one. There were a couple weird foul calls here and there. It was very like, sometimes it was like ticky-tacky fouls, and other times you could like punch someone in the face and nothing would happen, and all of those like kind of weird and controversial calls kind of culminated mostly in the Draymond Green ejection in the second quarter of this game. Draymond hit Brandon Clark in the face going for a block and then kind of pulled his jersey down and ended up getting ejected with a flagrant 2, which he very animatedly kind of showed his displeasure with that by like running around the court high-fiving, like hyping up the Grizzlies crowd. After the game, he was seen in street clothes coming back out of the tunnel and like high-fiving his Warriors teammates, which was really funny to see. But it was very clear that this one was high playoff atmosphere, and when Draymond got ejected, it looked kind of bad for the Warriors because he is so integral. The second that he went out, the Grizzlies went on a decent run. I think they ended up scoring like 5 straight. It was very clear that momentum was shifting, but the Warriors calmed things down and eventually came back out in the third quarter and really started to heat up. Steph Curry got going especially, but the guy I want to give the biggest shout out to in this game is Jordan Poole. Coming into this season, Jordan Poole was kind of looked at as a guy that for most people is a 6 Man of the Year candidate, maybe even a most improved player candidate because of what he showed at the end of last season. Overall last season, he was decent, but really those last few games, that last month or so, he really started to heat up and showed what he could potentially do. And so coming into this year with Klay Thompson's return coming up, it was seen that Jordan Poole would be kind of the 6-man spark plug off the bench, but he's way more than that. Jordan Poole has been one of the most consistent offensive players on this team, period, which is kind of insane when you look at all of the talent that they have. He is just so talented and gifted with the ball, especially his handle and his ability to finish at the rim. Jordan Poole is ridiculously shifty. There are so many times where he goes up on the rim with one hand, switches to the other, a lot of finesse, but also power finishes. He can drill a 3 when someone hits him in the head, which he did in this game from like the hash mark. He can hit off the dribble threes. His step back is quick. He just has such a big bag of go-to moves that the defender really never knows what Jordan Poole is going to do. He's not always going to attack. Sometimes he's going to step back. He could pull it for a floater, hit you in the mid-range, have a crazy finish at the rim, and his playmaking is really solid too. There are a lot of times where the Grizzlies had to commit multiple defenders on his drives, or when he got the ball and he was in the corner and there was a closeout coming, he would dribble step in and another defender would shift over to try and stop him after the flyby. He would kick it over to the other guy on the wing. He's just such a smart player. Everything that Jordan Poole does, and I think the Warriors just kind of like this Warriors system is so good at producing smart players. It feels like everyone on this team knows what they're supposed to do, knows their role, and know what they're capable of. And Jordan Poole, every time he goes out there, he's like, I can put up 30, and if they start doubling me, if they start coming at me with different defensive schemes, I know exactly who to get the ball to, when to pick and choose my shots. He doesn't force it a lot, or he especially didn't in this game. He's just a really special player, and the way that he has improved from last season to this year, he was my most improved player, and I think it was still kind of crazy that he didn't even end up on the finalist for most improved player. I thought going from last year being in the G League for part of the year to this year being one of the most consistent options on a championship caliber team is really impressive, and he really made the Grizzlies pay in this one. He put up 31 with 8 rebounds, 9 assists, an incredible performance from a guy who, before like last season, he was considered one of the worst players in the league after his rookie year. In that year where the Warriors, they were missing Steph, Klay, Draymond missed a lot of the season. Jordan Poole was one of those guys that took a lot of shots. He was really inefficient, but I think that kind of gave him an opportunity to learn about his game, improve, and figure out what he needed to work on, which ultimately has made him into this incredible player that we see now. He's really young, and so he's only going to continue to get better, and as those Warriors stars like Steph, Clay, Draymond age a little bit, Jordan Poole is going to be ready to step in immediately alongside guys like Jonathan Kuminga, who played some pretty solid playoff minutes tonight, Moses Moody, who didn't play tonight but has shown a lot of flashes. Gary Payton II, I also want to give a shout to. He got the start over Jordan Poole in this one for defensive reasons, and he made so many crucial plays down the stretch. I can't believe he was a guy that the Warriors were able to pick up so easily. Steph did have 24 in this one, especially in the third quarter. He heated up to kind of keep this game close. On the Grizzlies side of the ball, John Morant had a pretty good game with 34, 9, and 10, but he ended up missing the game-winning layup, or it was game-winning layup, because Klay Thompson missed 2 free throws at the end of the game, which is very uncharacteristic of him. But John Morant got a pretty good look at the basket. It was very contested. Steph and Klay on back-to-back possessions in this one played such good defense on John Morant driving downhill, which is very tough to do, especially on that last play. They ran a play where John Morant ran in from beyond half court, kind of got the little dump-off pass, and just sprinted right at the rim. And when John Morant has full speed like that, it is really hard to stop him going to the rim. But Klay played phenomenal defense. Gary Payton II rotated over as well, and he was there with a block if need be. John Morant just missed the layup, and the Warriors end up winning, taking game 1 over the Grizzlies in a really impressive fashion. This was a really tough game, and one that the Warriors definitely could have let get away from them once Draymond ended up getting ejected, but they kind of showed their championship DNA that they know they should be here, and they have been here before by staying locked in, not letting that kind of send them into a spiral where they're like, Draymond's out, whatever, we'll get him next game. They continue to stay locked in. It's what the Warriors do. It's what they've been doing for years. And so this was a pretty big win for them. For the Grizzlies, they fought really hard. Jaren also was incredible with 33 and 10. He was drilling 3 after 3, which still is kind of crazy to me because I don't think he really has like a jump shot for him. Every time Jaren shoots the ball, it feels different, but it was cashing. And when Jaren is playing like that, that is when the Grizzlies are their scariest. A lot of times he can be inconsistent from 3. He can start to get into foul trouble defensively, but when he's playing disciplined defense and hitting his shots, this Grizzlies team is really scary. Probably the biggest disappointment in this game for the Grizzlies was Desmond Bane, who only had 9 points. Dylan Brooks was also really inefficient in this one, missing a lot of shots. He did have a big 3 down the stretch, but overall, they need him to shoot a little bit better. I think the Grizzlies are going to be fine. There was just a couple different factors that they kind of need to figure out. This is one that I fully expect to go 6 or 7 games. I'm really excited for it. It was a good time. I enjoyed this one. I really felt like my heart racing for a lot of this game too, which is weird being a neutral fan, but I guess that kind of goes to show how intense this game was. So shout out to the Warriors and Grizzlies, both played a pretty good one. Looking forward to game 2. And secondly, and unfortunately, finally, for some reason, I thought there were 3 games today, which would not have made any sense. So when I found out that Warriors-Grizzlies was the last game, pretty disappointed, but we had another game today earlier on, Bucks versus Celtics game 1. As if you watched my second round predictions video, I said that this was probably the most important game for the Bucks. To take this game 1 after being a little bit fresher, having played more recently than the Celtics, they needed to jump on them, get that early win to maybe get Chris Middleton to come back at some point. He's not supposed to, but maybe you can continue to extend this series and see if he can come back. But jumping on them and getting this initial win in Boston, utilizing that momentum that you have, the Celtics having sat on the couch for a little bit longer, maybe coming to this a little more lackadaisical and unfocused, the Bucks had to jump on this opportunity, and they did, winning 101-89. Their defense was absolutely incredible in this one. Drew Holiday, Javon Carter, Brook Lopez was phenomenal guarding the rim, Giannis, of course. Just so many different guys on this team stepped up in a big way to commit to this thing defensively. They forced a ton of turnovers over the course of this game. Weird, undisciplined ones that we didn't see at all in the first round with the Celtics. And it just shows the difference between that Nets team and this Bucks team. This Bucks team has so many smart defenders, so many different schemes to throw at you, where that Nets team really just doesn't have the interior defense, which is super critical against the Celtics team that a lot of times goes double big with Robert Williams and Al Horford. So the Bucks much more equipped to handle that, and that was something that I mentioned in that video. Also, getting some offense from some of those peripheral guys was huge in the absence of Chris Middleton. Giannis only had 24, but being a low-scoring game, that was really all they needed. 15 and 11 from Bobby Portis, 25 from Drew, which was huge for them in this game. They needed Drew, and they're going to continue to need Drew to step up in a big way, and he did, both defensively and offensively, also adding 9 rebounds and 5 assists. They got 11 from Grayson Allen, who had 9 points in 1 quarter. I can't remember which one it was, but he started to kind of go crazy. Also played some solid defense as well. well, and they get the win. That was huge. They forced Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown both into pretty poor shooting performances, especially Jaylen Brown. He really struggled in this one. Tatum did manage to put up 21, 6, and 6, but it was really hard for him to get any open looks. Whenever the Celtics got an open look, it was after having been bumped like 18 times, running around screens. They just kind of looked exhausted after this one, which is exactly what the Bucks need to do. They need to be physical. They need to really get up on those guys, force them when they do get open looks, that they had to work for it over and over and over again. Eventually, they're going to kind of tire out, and it kind of looked like that was the way it was going. Marcus Smart hurt his shoulder in this one, but ended up coming back in, so hopefully that's all good. Like I said, Jaylen Brown only had 12 points. He really struggled. The Celtics just really couldn't get any offense going. It's going to be a big adjustment going from the Brooklyn Nets to this series. It's going to be a lot more physical, a lot harder to get open looks, and it's going to be a lot tougher on them defensively. They played pretty good defense. They only gave up 101 points, but the problem was the defense of the Bucks was so stout and was just so good at making the Celtics take uncomfortable shots that they only put up 89. If they can play defense to keep the Bucks to 101, they're probably going to be okay in this series most of the time, but this was one of those games where they just could not get that offense going. They've got to kind of figure that out, get into more maybe transition opportunities. Their half-court offense especially was really sluggish. They weren't getting many good looks, and a lot of that was due to the defensive rotations of the Bucks. But overall, the Celtics, they just kind of look like they weren't really in their rhythm. Like I said, maybe that is a symptom of having been off for a few days, but I think the Bucks kind of just threw them off their game, came at them hard. Shout to Mike Budenholzer, who drew a pretty good game plan for this one to kind of come out, get this win a super critical win. Also, one other shout out I want to give is, of course, Giannis is great and everything like that, but something that's really underrated about Giannis is his ability to adapt his game to different scenarios. So many people kind of look at him as like, oh, he just runs and dunks, which I think most people have kind of moved on from now, but there might still be some of y'all that look at him that way. But Giannis is such a versatile player. He had 24, 13, and 12 with a triple-double in this one, but he shot pretty poorly. I think it was like 8 for 24, 25 or something like that, which is pretty bad because the Celtics were forcing him to take a lot of jumpers. Their size inside with Horford and Robert Williams, as well as Grant Williams, all of them playing really good defense on Giannis. And so rather than continuing to force shots, Giannis would take the looks that he got, but really shifted to a playmaking focus, which was huge for this team because obviously the Celtics game plan is to get the ball out of Giannis's hands. If you want to beat the Bucks, you can't have Giannis dropping 50 on you. So they put those physical, bigger defenders on him to force hit the ball out of his hands. They would send multiple guys, traps, things like that. And Giannis was just so good at driving into the paint. And if he saw two bodies, just kicking out to whoever was open. He did a phenomenal job at that. Passing inside on cuts. There were a lot of great cuts in this game by the other guys on the Bucks that Giannis hit. He's just such a talented player, and the ability to recognize, hey, they're really keying in on me, and I have to make plays for the others on this team if we're going to win, is a really important skill, especially for a guy like Giannis, who is a multiple-time MVP, a Finals MVP who dropped 50 in the NBA Finals. I'm sure it could reach a point where you're like, I'm unstoppable. I can still score despite these defensive mismatches and like different schemes that they're throwing at me. But instead of doing that, he really locked in, started playmaking, and that was huge for this team. That was really kind of probably the biggest reason why the Bucks won this game is Giannis's commitment to playmaking, helping the others on this team, and ultimately that's part of why they got the win. He's going to have to continue to do that. They're going to need his playmaking to get open shots for others. Without Chris Middleton, they lack another shot creator. So if Giannis is not only getting his own shots, but creating shots for others, as well as Jrue Holiday, who, like I said, had 5 assists, it goes a long way towards the Bucks trying to win this series and getting out of it to go back to the Eastern Conference Finals for the second time in 2 seasons. So those are my thoughts. A lot of people are saying this series is over already, which I don't think it is. I think the Celtics are going to be fine. I think they bounce back. So if you're one of those people, I think that's a bit of an overreaction, but who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. So those are my thoughts on the games. Let me know what your biggest takeaways were in the comment section below. Like I said, I'm really curious to see what y'all have to say. But for right now, I will see y'all. I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one safe.